Namaste all. And I will ask you to pray for me that Sri Aurobindo can speak through me, not my words, but his, because we are beginning the most extraordinary work ever written, which Mother says that this is his message. All the rest is just preparation. So Life Divine, Synthesis of Yoga, Essays on the Gita, they are all preparation. Savitri is the message. So we begin with Book 1, the Book of Beginnings, Canto 1, the symbol dawn. And I will ask all of you to read with me the first line. It was the hour before the gods awake. It was the hour before the gods awake. How about all together? It was the hour before the gods awake. Now we see here that this great epic poem is written in iambic pentameter. And you just repeated iambic pentameter. An iamb is a beat, and it's a type of beat. It's short, long, short, long. So we have, it was the hour before the gods awake. Perfect iambic pentameter. So now you know that the whole of Savitri is in iambic pentameter, and that Sri Aurobindo has followed the great epic writers, Virgil, Homer, Milton, and others, who all wrote in the same way, iambic pentameter, because it's the most powerful of all the modes of poetry. Let's look at this first line. It was the hour before the gods awake. Why is it before the gods awake? And why is it just the hour before they awake? Well, everyone will have a different opinion of that. But the gods are the creative forces. And this creation is going to begin, but it's just the hour before it begins. And so we see the next line is about night. Now, across the path of the divine event capitalized, the huge, foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marge. Lot to discuss here. So the divine event, of course, is the creation. But across the path of that creation is this night, this huge, foreboding mind of night. And it's alone because it's in her own unlit temple of eternity. And where is it? It's laying stretched, immobile, upon silence marge. So why does Sri Aurobindo capitalize the word night? Well, we have to share a couple of things from his letters on yoga. Night is the symbol of the ignorance, or avidya, in which men live, just as light is the symbol of truth and knowledge. Then in another letter he says, in the way that one treads with the greater light above, even every difficulty gives its help and has its value, and night itself carries in it the burden of the light that has to be. How beautiful. Night is carrying in itself the burden of the light that has to be. Then he capitalizes the word silence. Now, we've talked about in our previous series of Savitri Satsang, in the house of Uma and William, what silence is and what do capitalized words mean in Savitri when Sri Aurobindo capitalizes them. Again, four things from the letters on yoga about silence. Now, we don't have an S after silence, we have an apostrophe. And when we see that apostrophe, we don't say silences, because that would be 2 beats. Lay stretched, immobile, upon silence marge. Silence is a state in which either there is no movement of the mind or vital, or else a great stillness, which no surface movement can pierce or alter. Silence is the absence of all motion of thought or other vibration of activity. In complete silence, there are either no thoughts, or thoughts come, but they are felt as something coming from outside and not disturbing the silence. Now, there's a remembrance here I have of Temi. And I said, Temi, were you able to stop the thoughts from coming in, as Sri Aurobindo did with Lily in one day? She said, no. She said, they come and I pay no attention to them at all. So here is that statement. So there is either no movement of the mind or vital, or else a great stillness, which no surface movement can pierce or alter. In complete silence, there are either no thoughts or thoughts come, but they are felt as something coming from outside and not disturbing the silence. So here Sri Aurobindo has given the complete direction to us of how to silence the mind. Either stop the thoughts from coming in, or allow them to come in and pay no attention to them. Now he says silence of the mind, peace or calm in the mind, are 3 things that are very close together and bring each other. Now, in our book, Flowers and Their Messages, Mother writes that silence means freedom from thoughts and vital movements, when the whole consciousness is quite still. Now, in the letters on yoga, the last quote from Sri Aurobindo, very, very important. It is on the silence behind the cosmos that all the movement of the universe is supported. It is from the silence that the peace comes. When the peace deepens and deepens, it becomes more and more the silence. In a more outward sense, the word silence is applied to the condition in which there is no movement of thought or feeling, only a great stillness of the mind. Now we have one other word here, silence marge. The marge, poetically, is the edge, the margin, whether material or immaterial. So, we continue, because we had a full stop after March. The next line, almost one felt, opaque, impenetrable, in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A lot to cover again. Almost one felt, one, the creation, if you will, the soul. Almost one felt opaque, no light in it, impenetrable, in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, somber, dim, gloomy, shadowy, almost, we could say, depressing, dark and sullen or dejected. Now, this eyeless muse is very interesting because technically, according to the dictionary, it means without eyes. But Alok told me, you see, I have asked many questions of the great disciples. And Alok, Shradhalu, Purani, Madhav Pandit, so many others, Jumur, and Temi. Alok says it is not just a state of blindness from which one can recover, but a state where the very possibility of seeing is not there, either because it is not yet born. And Temi tells us it's without the faculty of sight, not really blind. The abysm of the unbodied infinite. Now, an abysm, of course, is simply an abyss, a great, huge emptiness below. And here he says the unbodied infinite. Now, we know about the unbodied from Sri Aurobindo is that it's something that has not yet taken a form of a body. So it's the abysm of this unbodied infinite. And here he capitalizes the word infinite. And we have so much from Sri Aurobindo on infinite. So first, the life divine. The infinite is not a sum of things. It is that which is all things and more. So the infinite is even more than all things. It's not a sum at all. And then he tells us that even the words eternal and infinite are only symbolic expressions through which the mind feels without grasping some vague impression of this supreme. And since he has capitalized infinite, it is the supreme. But it's the supreme that is yet unbodied. And it's in that abysm of the infinite. Now, in the essays on the Gita, he says, yet the highest power and manifestation is only a very partial revelation of the infinite. Even the whole universe is informed by only one degree of his greatness, the divine's greatness, illumined by one ray of his splendor, glorious with a faint hint of his delight and beauty. Now, this is very interesting from the Mother about the infinite. In her collected works, volume 16, she says, the infinite is the river that flows without cease. The individual is the little pond that dries up slowly in the sun. Consecration is the canal that connects the river to the pond and prevents the pond from drying up. A fathomless zero occupied the world. So we go back and we see this nothingness, we see this extraordinary divine force just unbodied. We are seeing that almost unsighted and stretched upon this marge of silence. And that's night. So nothing has happened yet. No creation is felt. Nothing at all. A power of fallen, boundless self between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught. So extraordinary that we see this fathomless zero occupying the whole world, and that's the manifested universe. And this power of fallen, boundless self, awake between the first and the last nothingness. Nothingness is the quality or state of non-existence, emptiness. Recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came. Tenebrous, always dark and gloomy. Turned from the insoluble mystery of birth. Well, what is this insoluble mystery of birth? We can't figure it out. We're born, and the moment we're born, we begin to die. So life is just a limit between birth and death. And so this tardy process of mortality, what does it mean? It's insoluble, it's a mystery. And therefore, it longs to reach its end in vacant naught. Naught here has two spellings. Sri Aurobindo prefers to use N-A-U-G-H-T. Most of the dictionaries I've looked at prefer N-O-U-G-H-T. But Sri Aurobindo is consistent with N-A. So we see that there's not really a call yet for manifestation, because this insoluble mystery of birth, this tardy process of mortality is meaningless. And so it longed to reach its end in vacant naught. Dark is over everything still. There's no process of mortality. Even though it could be tardy, it's not there. As in a dark beginning of all things. Now this is very interesting because it's beginning to tell us something very different. As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown. And here we have to go very slowly. And I'm always going to be going very slowly with you. And if you have any questions at all, just raise your hand. What is this unknown capitalized? Well, in the Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo tells us exactly what it is. The unknown is not the unknowable. It need not remain unknown for us unless we choose ignorance or persist in our first limitations. So I don't want to know anything, I just want to go through my life and let it be. So we don't want to know it unless we choose ignorance or persist in our first limitations of not wanting to know it. For to all things that are not unknowable, very important now, all things in the universe, there correspond in that universe faculties which can take cognizance of them. And in man, the microcosm, these faculties are always existent and at a certain stage capable of development. So nothing that we think is unknown is unknowable. He further says, one last sentence, we may choose not to develop them. Where they are partially developed, we may discourage and impose on them a kind of atrophy. But fundamentally, all possible knowledge is knowledge within the power of humanity. As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown. It has no features yet, because it's the unknown. And the semblance is only some kind of indication of the unknown. Repeating forever the unconscious act, prolonging forever the unseeing will. Look at how Sri Aurobindo is emphasizing to us that this unconscious act goes on forever, and the unseeing will prolongs forever, cradled the cosmic drowse of ignorant force. So it's a cosmic drowse. It's not the drowse of the transcendent divine, because there is only peace and calm, non-manifestation. So it's in the cosmos that we feel it. So this unseeing will, this unconscious act, cradled the cosmic drowse of ignorant force. And now I have to give you quite a few things on this force. In the hymns to the mystic fire, Sri Aurobindo writes, force is nothing but the power of being in motion. And then in the Life Divine, he tells us all phenomenal existence resolves itself into force. Well, yes, all phenomenal existence. This is not actually a table. It's just different forces arranged in a way that it seems to be a table. All phenomenal existence resolves itself into force, into a movement of energy that assumes more or less material, more or less gross or subtle forms for self-presentation to its own experience. And then in the Letters on Yoga, he says, force is the essential Shakti. Energy is the working drive of the force, its active dynamism. Power is the capacity born of the force. And in the synthesis of yoga, very important, for existence itself is and must always be the stuff of its own becoming. It must be shaped into the substance with which force has to deal. Force again must be the power which works out that substance and works with it to whatever ends. Force is that which we ordinarily call nature. A passive force has no meaning. Force is always dynamic. Only a force can act on a basis of calm passivity, just as in the material world, the force acts on the basis of inertia. So clay is inert to us, and yet the force is working, and we are born from the sod, out of clay. And the manifestation, according to the 10 avatars in India, is very progressive. The sea creature, the fish, the amphibian, and so forth. You all know these things. Force is inherent in existence. Shiva and Kali, Brahman and Shakti are one, and not two who are separable. All force is power or means of a secret spirit. The force that sustains the world is a conscious will, and nature is its machinery of executive power. And that's from the Renaissance in India. Whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulist whirl. Somnambulist is sort of sleepwalking. And this force, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns. And we've talked before of Virat, who lights his fires in the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulist whirl. So that whirl is something revolving rapidly around a center or an axis, and this center is the divine. But basically, until we break through the ignorance, our life is still basically a somnambulist whirl. A swift rotation or a rapid whirling movement. I'll go a little more because our time is almost up, but I'd just like to do a few more. Well, no, I think it's enough. Any questions? So I make it 6 o'clock. 6:15? Okay. Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space. What is athwart? Well, I've talked a lot about this with Temi, and it's just something that's moving from side to side, crosswise or transversely, contrary to the proper or expected course. And when it's in motion, it's moving from side to side. Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space. Now, space. We have so many dictionary definitions of space, and they're all rather puny from what Sri Aurobindo tells us about space. And this is from the Life Divine. It's only one paragraph, but a little long. It is possible, in pure mentality, to disregard the movement of event and the disposition of substance and realize the pure movement of conscious force which constitutes space and time. These two are then merely two aspects of the universal force of consciousness, which in their intertwined interaction comprehend the warp and woof of its action upon itself. Now, when they create these marvelous curtains or drapery, they do it on a machine that has the warp and the woof, the horizontal and the vertical threads. And that's this warp and woof Sri Aurobindo is talking about, this action upon itself. And to a consciousness higher than mind, which should regard our past, present, and future in one view. And this is, of course, Trikala Dristi, which Mother had seen in all of us. When we went before her, she would see immediately our past, she would know our present, and she would even know the possibilities of our future, because they're not totally preordained, because we can rise above karma and fate. And to a consciousness higher than mind, which should regard our past, present, and future in one view, containing and not contained in them, not situated at a particular moment of time for its point of prospection. Time might well offer itself as an eternal present. And to the same consciousness, not situated at any particular point of space, but containing all points and regions in itself, space also might well offer itself as a subjective and indivisible extension, no less subjective than time. So here we have this present and future in one view, and we can think of the Akashic records, in which there is the record of everything that happens on this earth. It's all there. And last night I spoke to my class about the Tibetan children who are taken into a room with thousands and thousands of drawers. And if you want mathematics, maybe there are hundreds of drawers and you learn mathematics. If you want different languages, they are all there. So this is a very small example, but a very true one, of the Akashic nature. So, pardon?
I didn't understand.
I couldn't hear you.
I didn't understand.
If you rise above the mind into the progression of the higher states of consciousness, especially not just the higher mind or the illumined mind, but the intuitive or overmind, you can tap into the Akashic records. They are the record of all the experiences and events of humanity and even animals and other creatures on the earth. You can go there and find anything you want. So, we'll continue. It's formless stupor without mind or life. This stupor is an inertia, a state of reduced or suspended sensibility. So it's formless stupor without mind or life, a shadow spinning through a soulless void, thrown back once more into unthinking dreams, earth wheeled abandoned in the hollow gulfs, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. So now the whole thing comes to be understandable to us. Everything is relating to the aspect of the creation of the world from its lowest point of inertness, incapacity, inconscience, up to the supramental. So Earth now is wheeling, spinning around in these hollow gulfs of the night, of course. And she's forgetful of her spirit and her fate, because she's thrown into this inconscience. And we have learned from the Divine Mother that there were 6 pralayas until this present time, which she tells us there will not be a 7th. These pralayas in the past, Lemuria, Atlantis, and others, may have well been more advanced than us in technology, in occult knowledge, but they destroyed themselves in some way, and we don't know what created that. Mother only could tell us that. So now Earth is thrown back once more into unthinking dreams. They are dreams, but they're unthinking. And she wheels abandoned in the hollow gulfs, just spinning around, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. And I'll just go a little more, because then we have next week's very important section. The impassive skies were neutral, empty, still. Full stop. Then something in the inscrutable darkness stirred. Inscrutable, physically impenetrable, difficult to fathom or understand, impenetrable. A nameless movement, an unthought idea, and we have to go into idea, so I'll close with that and end the page. In the Supramental Manifestation book, small book of Sri Aurobindo, he has 2 very important quotes. And he speaks about the idea. The idea is the realization of a truth in consciousness, as the fact is its realization in power. Notice that he capitalized the word idea. And very often he uses the word real-idea as a synonym for the supramental. The idea is not a reflection of the external fact, which it so much exceeds. Rather, the fact is only a partial reflection of the idea which has created it. He often uses the word gnosis as the synonym for the real idea. Now, in the Life Divine, he's going to tell us, the view I am presenting goes farther in idealism. It sees the creative idea as real idea. That is to say, a power of conscious force expressive of real being, born out of real being and partaking of its nature, and neither a child of the void nor a weaver of fictions. It is conscious reality, throwing itself into mutable forms of its own imperishable and immutable substance. The world is therefore not a figment of conception in the universal mind, but a conscious birth of that which is beyond mind into forms of itself. And he told Dilip Kumar Roy, the world is a being. The earth is a being, and the world is only the form it takes to manifest. In supermind being, consciousness of knowledge and consciousness of will are not divided, as they seem to be in our mental operations. So consciousness of knowledge and consciousness of will are not divided. They are a trinity, one movement with three effective aspects. Each has its own effect. Being gives the effect of substance. Consciousness, the effect of knowledge, of the self-guiding and shaping idea, of comprehension and apprehension. Will gives the effect of self-fulfilling force. But the idea is only the light of the reality illumining itself. It is not mental thought nor imagination, but effective awareness. It is real idea. And so Sri Aurobindo is talking to us about Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Shakti Ananda. And the last one, as mind is only a final operation of supermind, so life is only a final operation of the consciousness force, of which real idea is the determinative form and creative agent. Consciousness, that is force, is the nature of being. And this conscious being, manifested as a creative knowledge will, is the real idea or supermind. Sri Aurobindo is constantly leading us into this supermind. So, namaste all. Namaste. And let us sing Om.
Bhavan, can you read from the beginning to
What?
Can you read from the beginning to the end, please?
Can I read the whole thing?
Yes.
Well, we're going quite late, but
I have one question now.
yes.
I like to hear God's awake and self-awake.
You'll have to speak a little louder for
The
me.
first line, there is a God's awake. It was all before the God's awake. And there are two lines below, self-awake. So who is the difference? Or?
Saying in the last line it was God's awake, and before it was self-awake.
Okay. I don't know what you're quoting from. The self is the divine.
First line, there is a God's awake.
It was the hour before the gods awake.
Yes.
The first line. And here is the self-awake. Is there a difference in the gods, before the gods awake and before the self-awake? This is the question.
Yeah, the gods awake, they have not come into manifestation yet. There is no earth yet. There's only darkness, only darkness. But when we're going to find out that this force tries to enter and bring knowledge and light, it's rejected by humanity. Rejected. We'll pick it up next week.
In secret of Vedas, we learn that the intuition is a structure in the bodies.
You see, I'm slightly hard of hearing. We pick it up next week. I'll read. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge, foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marge. Almost, one felt, opaque, impenetrable, in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world, a power of fallen, boundless self, awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught. As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconscious act, prolonging forever the unseeing will, cradled the cosmic drowse of ignorant force, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulist whirl. Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space, its formless stupor without mind or life, a shadow spinning through a soulless void, thrown back once more into unthinking dreams, earth wheeled abandoned in the hollow gulfs, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. The impassive skies were neutral, empty, still. Then something in the inscrutable darkness stirred, a nameless movement, an unthought idea. And that's as far as we got. Concentration, and we will do 3 ohms. Om. 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 Namaste all. Namaste.